I wasn't planning to make a video today. In fact, I was halfway through editing something else until I opened my inbox this morning. There was a single new email. No subject line. No attachments. Just a name. Edward K., a retired American living in Kuala Lumpur. At first, I thought it was spam. But when I clicked it open, I found something entirely different. A full confession. A warning. A story about a woman. A night market. A coincidence that wasn't a coincidence. In the moment, he realized someone had been following him long before he ever noticed her smile. What you're going to hear next is Edward's own account. Unfiltered, unnerving, and honestly, one of the strangest stories I've ever read from an expat in Malaysia. Before we dive in, do me a favor. If you enjoy stories like this, please remember to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, especially if you want more true stories sent directly from the shadows of real people's lives. Now, here is Edward's story exactly as he wrote it. I never imagined I'd be starting over at 67. Retirement was supposed to be slow mornings, quiet streets, maybe fishing every once in a while. Instead, my life became airplanes, visas, and a one-way ticket to Malaysia, a place I had only seen in travel documentaries where everything looked bright and warm and uncomplicated. Kuala Lumpur turned out to be loud, messy, and alive in ways I wasn't prepared for. But it was also anonymous. And after losing my wife, anonymous was exactly what I needed. I fell into a routine quickly. I'd wake up before sunrise, walk around KLCC Park with the other early risers, joggers, Tai Chi groups, retirees who fed the pigeons like it was their calling in life. Then I'd grab kopi ace and roti canai at a Mamek stall where the waiter started calling me uncle by week 2. My days were predictable in the way grief likes things to be, quiet and repetitive. Until the night I met Vienna. It was a Wednesday, humid enough that my shirt stuck to my back before I even reached Jalan Alor. The whole street was lit with hanging bulbs, sizzling woks, shouting vendors, and the smell of chili smoke drifting like an invisible haze. Tourists snapped photos. Locals bargained over durians the size of bowling balls. The usual chaos. I only went because my condo felt too empty that night. I was in line for grilled squid, one of the stalls that always had a crowd, when someone bumped into my shoulder, hard enough to jolt me forward. "Oh, sorry," a woman said, her voice warm and soft. I turned, and that was the first time I ever saw her. Vienna. She was holding a plastic cup of sugarcane juice, half the ice already melted. Her hair was tied loosely at the back, wisps falling across her cheek. She had this open, disarming smile, the kind that makes you want to smile back before you know why. I told her it was fine. She laughed, nervous but friendly, and stepped aside, but didn't actually leave. Instead, she lingered, watching the skewers on the grill as if that had been her intention all along. "You're American, right?" she asked, tilting her head. "Is it that obvious?" "Only a little," she said, teasing. "The way you stand. Americans stand like they're waiting for something important." I didn't know how to answer that, so I chuckled, and she chuckled, and suddenly we were talking as if we hadn't just met 10 seconds ago. She told me her name was Vienna Lim, Chinese Malaysian, 30-something, not Muslim, worked flexible jobs, whatever pays the rent, she joked. Her Cantonese accent came out only on certain words, softening her speech. When the stall owner handed me my food, Vienna stepped closer to look. "That one's good," she said, "but the stall 2 streets down is better. Less tourists, more local taste." "Then show me," I said without thinking. She blinked in surprise, a long, slow blink, as if I'd said something she didn't expect. Then she grinned, lifted her cup, and said, "Okay, cool me." We walked together through the night market. She pointed out foods I'd never tried, told me which vendors secretly overcharged foreigners, laughed when I mispronounced simple Malay words, and listened like she genuinely cared when I talked about my old engineering job back in California. It felt easy, disarmingly easy. Too easy, maybe, but I was hungry for connection, and loneliness makes you overlook things you shouldn't. At one point she asked, "Why Malaysia? Why not Thailand or Vietnam?" Most retired Westerners choose those. "I wanted someplace where nobody knew me," I said. She looked up at me then, and there was something in her eyes, something sharp and understanding, like she knew exactly what I meant. And that was my first red flag. But I didn't see it at the time. We ended the night eating fried kwai tio off paper plates, sitting on a curb while motorcycles zipped past inches from our feet. Vienna talked about books she liked, movies she hated, and the time she almost moved to Singapore but decided it was too clean to feel real. I asked where she lived. She hesitated, then waved vaguely. Not far. Around the area. And you? She asked. Bukit Bintang, I replied. A few minutes from here. She nodded like she already knew, like it wasn't new information. Then she caught herself, eyes widening for a split second, and said quickly, yeah, I guessed. Most foreigners stay around there. It was a small mistake, barely noticeable, but it lingered in my mind like a tiny splinter. I told myself she was just guessing, or maybe she'd seen me around the neighborhood, which was when she said the words that, in hindsight, should have made me stop everything. I've seen you before. I turned to her. Where? She blinked, too fast. Oh, no, I mean here. Jalan Alor is small, right? People bump into each other all the time. But her voice wavered. Just a fraction. We parted ways near the overhead red lanterns. She touched my arm lightly, gentle enough to feel like permission, dangerous enough to feel like invitation. I hope we meet again, she said. Do you want to exchange numbers? I asked. She hesitated again, then smiled. Not yet. If we're meant to, we'll meet again. That should have been strange, but instead it felt mysterious in a romantic sort of way, like something out of a movie. I went home that night floating, feeling younger than I had in years. But as soon as I closed my condo door behind me, the image of her saying, I've seen you before, came back again. This time it didn't feel romantic. It felt deliberate, like she wasn't just another passerby, like she had been waiting, watching, choosing her moment. I didn't know it then, but that night was the last peaceful moment I had before everything started unraveling. Because Vienna hadn't just appeared in my life by chance. She had been following me, and that was only the beginning. The morning after I met Vienna, I woke up still thinking about her. Her smile, her voice, the way she seemed to study me when she thought I wasn't looking. It felt ridiculous, a 67-year-old man behaving like a teenager. But loneliness does strange things. It makes attention feel like affection, and affection feel like fate. I told myself not to overthink it. Coincidences happen, I whispered while making my morning coffee. People run into each other in a big city all the time. At least, that's what I believed for the next 3 days. Then the coincidences started multiplying. It began at the Mammoth stall near my condo, the one where the waiters called me uncle. I went there every morning for kopi ace and roti. It was my routine, my refuge. On a Friday morning, just as I settled into my seat, someone slid into the chair across from me. Vienna. She was wearing jeans, a simple white t-shirt, and that same effortless smile. Oh, Uncle Edward, she said, pretending she had only just noticed me. What are the chances, right? That phrase, what are the chances, would follow me like a mocking echo over the next few weeks. I nodded politely, but my pulse picked up. I never told her where I lived. I never mentioned this stall. Do you come here often? She asked. Every morning, I said before I could stop myself. Her smile stretched wider for a moment, then softened, like she'd gotten the confirmation she needed. Oh, I was just passing by, she said. I needed breakfast too, but she didn't order anything. She just watched me eat. The second coincidence came 2 days later. I was browsing a secondhand bookstore in Bukit Bintang, the kind where the aisles are so narrow you have to turn sideways to pass someone. I was flipping through an old National Geographic when a familiar voice whispered behind me. Fancy meeting you here. I nearly dropped the magazine. Vienna stood there, holding a paperback romance novel, acting like she'd discovered a hidden treasure. Oh, I love this place, she said. Do you come often? No, I lied. Just wandered in. She nodded like she understood, but her eyes told a different story. She drifted through the shelves with me, never more than a few feet away. She commented on book covers, made jokes about outdated travel guides, and once or twice touched my arm lightly, each time giving me a small electric shock of warmth, of possibility. Still, something fell off. Because of all the bookstores in Kuala Lumpur, she just happened to be in this one, in this exact neighborhood, at this exact time. I tried to push the doubt away, but it lingered like humidity, invisible, sticky, impossible to ignore. The third coincidence broke the illusion completely. It was a Monday afternoon when I decided to take the LRT to KL Central. I rarely use the train. Crowds make me uneasy, but the weather was too hot for walking. I tapped my card, walked onto the platform, and froze. Vienna was standing there, right in front of the yellow line. Back turned, only a few meters away. My stomach tightened. Before I could decide what to do, she turned around and gasped. "Edward? Oh my God, what are you doing here?" Her eyes were wide, full of exaggerated shock. I didn't respond immediately. I was too busy studying her expression. It was the way an actor reacts when they haven't rehearsed enough. Dramatic, a little too sharp, too practiced, but somehow unpolished. "I'm going to Central," I said. "What about you?" She hesitated a split second. "Oh, same, right?" She fell in a step beside me as the train arrived, weaving through the crowd with uncanny ease. Every time I looked at her, her smile flickered with something beneath it. Calculation, maybe, or anticipation. That was when I realized these meetings weren't accidents. They were patterns. Patterns behind a smile. And I had no idea how long they'd been happening. That evening, I met my expat friend Mark, a British guy I played chess with on Sundays. We were sitting on a bench at KLCC Park when he noticed I was distracted. "You look like you swallowed a bad durian," he muttered. "What's wrong?" I told him about Vienna. Not everything, but enough. Mark chuckled. "Careful, mate. Some people here are professionals." "Professionals?" He leaned in. "You'd be surprised how many young women target older foreigners. For money, for documents, for easy comfort. Some are harmless. Some," he lowered his voice, "aren't." The way he said "aren't" lodged in my chest like a stone. I wanted to defend Vienna. I liked Vienna, but a part of me, the part that had lived through enough loss to know better, whispered, "Wake up, Edward. You don't know this woman." I tried ignoring it, until she proved that part right. Over the next week, Vienna and I met several more times, each encounter feeling more planned than the last. She was charming, attentive, gentle, but her questions changed. They became sharper, more precise. "Do you live alone? How many years of pension do you have saved? Is it enough for you to stay here long term? What documents did you need to rent your condo?" She always followed the questions with something lighthearted. "Oh, I'm just curious. Just talking only law." But I wasn't stupid. She wasn't just making conversation. She was assessing me, and the realization made my skin crawl. Everything unraveled the night. I decided to look through the photos I'd taken during my first month in Kuala Lumpur before I ever met Vienna. It was one of those nights where the city felt too loud, too bright, too alive, and I needed to ground myself. I opened my phone, scrolled through pictures of Petronas Towers, street food, murals, random crowds, and then my blood went cold. There in the far background of photo I took outside pavilion was Vienna. She wasn't looking at the camera. She was looking at me. My hands began to shake. I scrolled again. Another photo, taken near the monorail station. Vienna, half hidden behind a group of tourists, head turned slightly in my direction. Another, and another. Weeks before she bumped into me at the night market. Vienna had been there, watching, trailing, following my movements like it was her job. I stared at the screen until my breath turned shallow and tight. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't fate. This wasn't romance. This was surveillance. And the sweet woman with the soft smile and gentle voice was someone I never should have let into my life. Because Vienna hadn't just appeared out of nowhere. She had been studying me for weeks. I didn't plan to follow her. I'm not the type. I'm a 67-year-old man with slightly aching knees and a lifetime of believing people deserve privacy. But that night, something fell off. We had just finished dinner at a little noodle shop near Pavilion. Vienna was lovely as always, animated, leaning forward when she talked, brushing her hair behind her ear in that gentle, almost shy way that made me feel like she was truly present with me. She laughed when I teased her about dipping her chili a little too aggressively. She blushed when the server called us a cute couple. And yet something was wrong. Her eyes kept darting over my shoulder. Her smile came half a second too late when I said something. Her hand trembled slightly when she reached for her drink. When we walked out into the neon wash of Bukit Bintang, she hugged me tightly, too tightly, before giving a soft goodbye and telling me she needed to grab something quick from Lot 10. But she didn't go toward Lot 10. She went the opposite direction. And without thinking, without planning, I followed. Bukit Bintang at night is a beast of noise and motion. People pushing past, music thumping from rooftop bars, the smell of grilled meat, perfume, motorbike exhaust. I stayed several meters behind her, weaving between tourists and late-night workers, careful not to lose her in the crowd. She moved faster than I'd ever seen her move. Her soft, gentle steps replaced by brisk, purposeful strides. She cut through the side street next to the old KFC, the one locals know but tourists rarely take, and slipped into a narrow alley wedge between two aging shop lots. A place where the fluorescent lights flicker and the walls are stained with decades of rain. I hesitated. It felt wrong, dangerous, but curiosity, or maybe fear, held me in place. I moved carefully to the corner, pressing my back against the cool concrete wall, leaning just enough to see inside. That's when I saw them. Vienna wasn't alone. Two men stood in front of her, blocking her path. They looked like they hadn't slept in days, tall, lean, and dressed in cheap black t-shirts. One of them jabbed a finger inches from her face. The other kept looking around, paranoid, scanning the alley. Vienna was arguing back, but not in the soft, careful way I'd known. This Vienna was sharp, angry, desperate. Her voice cracked with something colder than fear. I couldn't hear much. The bars nearby were too loud, but certain words cut through. Not anymore. You promised. I said I'm done. No, not him. Him. I felt a chill ripple across my arms. Then one of the men grabbed her wrist. Vienna jerked away, shoving him back with surprising strength. She said something through clenched teeth, then pointed at the ground like she was making a threat, not a plea. The men exchanged glances, and then, just as suddenly as the argument began, they stepped aside. Vienna rushed past them, pushing deeper into the alley. Moments later, she emerged from the other end, walking faster than before. I stepped back into the shadows, heart pounding, tried to compose myself before following the long way around to meet her on the main street. When she saw me, she flinched, just for a second, before smiling like nothing had happened. Edward, you didn't go home yet. Her voice was breathless, uneven. I thought you were heading to Lot 10, I said softly. She froze. Something behind her eyes dimmed. Oh, yes. Yes, I took a shortcut. You're shaking. No, I'm just tired. It's late. She wrapped her arms around herself, avoiding my gaze. And for the first time since I met her, I sensed she was afraid of me, knowing the truth. When I reached home, the night felt heavier. KL's usual warmth suddenly felt cold. I changed in my sleeping clothes, made tea, and tried to calm my nerves. But then the strange things began. At 1:27 a.m., I heard someone jiggling my condo door handle. Not gently, forcefully. I froze. The sound lasted 3 seconds. No more. Then silence returned, thick and suffocating. I checked the peephole. No one was there. I told myself it was a drunk neighbor, or the wind, or something rational. But then, at 2:40 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number, just like last week. I answered, heart racing. Silence. Not breathing, not static, intentional silence. Then the call ended. My hands were trembling when I set the phone down. The next morning, my landlord texted me. Hi, Mr. Edward. A woman came yesterday, asking if you're staying alone. She said she's your close friend. I didn't give any info, just letting you know. I stared at my phone for minutes. Vienna never mentioned coming here. She never asked for my unit number, never asked who my landlord was. But someone had come. Someone female. Someone who wanted to know if I was alone. I was already reaching for my keys when I saw the envelope. Thin, white, unmarked, slipped under my door sometime during the night. My throat tightened. Inside wasn't money, or threats, or demands. Just a single piece of paper. 7 words, written in shaking, hurried strokes. Stay away from her if you want to live. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. Not because of the warning, not because of the danger, but because the handwriting was oddly familiar. I'd seen it in a note Vienna once scribbled on a napkin, The night she wrote down the name of her favorite cafe. It wasn't a perfect match, but it was close. Too close. As if the person warning me was the very woman I was supposed to fear. For 2 days, the note under my door sat on my dining table like a living thing. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't focus. I kept replaying her expression that night in Bukit Bintang. The panic in her eyes, the trembling hand she tried to hide, the way she deflected every question with a soft smile. It gnawed at me, so I did something I never thought I'd do at my age. I investigated a woman I cared about. The first step was simple. I typed her name, Vienna Lim, into Google. Nothing. No Instagram. No Facebook. No LinkedIn. No address. No past jobs. No distant cousins sharing CNY photos. A beautiful woman in her 30s living in Kuala Lumpur with zero online presence? Impossible, unless she wanted it that way. I tried variations. Vienna L. V. Lim. Vienna Lin. Still nothing. Then I searched Lim Vienna Kale. A bakery in Cheris. A violin teacher. A florist who died in 2012. But not her. The absence was louder than any result, and the silence told me something her smile never did. Vienna might not exist. I didn't know where to turn, but 2 years in KL teaches an expat a few things, including whom to call when you need quiet answers. His name was Kamal, a fixer, not a detective, something in between. A man who knows people who know things. I met him once through a retired diplomat at a bar in Bangsar. He gave me his number, just in case I ever needed KL to talk. It was time. When I called, he answered on the second ring. Mr. Edward? 2 years, no call. You finally need something. Information, I said. About a woman. He chuckled. Always a woman. We met the next day, outside an old kopi shop in Pudu. Kamal wore a simple shirt, jeans, and a grin that said he already knew I was in trouble. Tell me everything, he said between sips of kopi yo. I did. The night market, the coincidences, the alley, the note, her disappearing online identity. When I finished, Kamal nodded slowly. Give me something real, he said. Phone number, IC, workplace, anything. I only have her number, I said. And a name she gave me. He typed her number into his phone. His eyebrows rose. Interesting. This number has been registered under 4 different names in the last 2 years. A cold shiver crawled up my spine. Is that normal? No, he leaned back. Not unless someone is actively hiding. He slid his phone into his pocket. Give me 2 days. 2 days felt like 2 months. When Kamal finally called me back, his voice was low. We need to meet. I arrived at the same kopi shop before he did. He sat down across from me, placed a folded piece of paper on the table, and exhaled. Her name isn't Vienna. My heart thudded. Then what is it? Lim Wei Xian. Age 33. Chinese Malaysian. Family from Malacca. I whispered her real name under my breath. The shape of it unfamiliar, heavy. She's not Muslim, Kamal added, as if anticipating my next question. So, at least that part, she didn't lie about. What about her family? He hesitated. Estranged. She left home 15 years ago. No one knows exactly why. The air felt thick around me. And the man in the alley? I asked. Kamal didn't answer at first. Instead, he looked down, as though picking his words carefully. She was involved with some groups. Scam operations, mostly. Not the petty phone call stuff. The organized kind. People who target lonely travelers, retirees, wealthy expats. My stomach twisted. Are you telling me she's a scammer? We don't know, he said gently. She was never caught, never arrested, but her name showed up on people's lips. Enough to raise questions. I leaned back, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. So what am I to her? Kamal sighed. That's the part one don't know. That night, I asked Vienna to meet me. No accusations, no anger. Just, we need to talk. She arrived at the small cafe near my condo, wearing a beige cardigan and the same soft expression that first disarmed me at the night market. But when she sat down, she sensed something. You're different tonight, she whispered. I slid the paper with her real name across the table. Her hand trembled as she picked it up. Lim, Wei Xian, I said quietly. That's you, isn't it? For a moment, she didn't breathe. Then her face crumpled. Not defensively, not theatrically, but like someone whose strength finally snapped. "Who told you?" she whispered. "It doesn't matter." Her eyes filled with tears she didn't wipe away. She pressed both hands flat against the table, as if steadying herself. "I didn't want you to ever see that name again." "Why not?" "Because I'm not that person anymore." "Then tell me who you are." Something broke inside her. Her voice shook as she whispered, "I watched you for 3 weeks before we met." My chest tightened. "Why?" She swallowed hard, tears sliding down her cheek. "Because you were a job." My breath stopped. She continued, voice small and trembling. "Someone hired me to monitor you, to watch where you went, what time you came home, who you spoke to. I was supposed to report every detail." I felt sick. "Why me?" "You were an easy mark." Her voice cracked. "A retired expat. Alone. Predictable. Someone they could use." "They?" She shook her head rapidly, panicked. "The men you saw in the alley. They're part of something bigger than anything you've seen." I told them I didn't want to continue. I told them I didn't want to hurt you. I stared at her, unable to speak. "But then I met you," she whispered, "and things changed." "I changed." "Did you?" I asked. "Or is this part of the plan?" She leaned forward, gripping my hand with both of hers. "Edward, you were never meant to know I existed." Her voice was a plea, a confession, a warning, and a sentence that felt like it belonged in a nightmare I hadn't woken from yet. Everything about her, the coincidences, the tenderness, the fear, was suddenly blurred with doubt. Because if her real name wasn't Vienna, and her past wasn't innocent, and her presence in my life wasn't chance, then the only thing left uncertain was the one thing that terrified me most. Did she truly care for me, or was that the biggest lie of all? I never thought that peeling back the layers of Vienna's past would take me here, to a web of old debts, dangerous men, and secrets I barely understood. But that's exactly where I ended up. After our confrontation at the cafe, I didn't sleep for 2 nights. My mind kept replaying her words. "You were never meant to know I existed." And if that was true, then someone else had a very specific reason for putting her in my life. I started digging, quietly, carefully. The first clue came from a stack of old business correspondence my late brother had left behind. He had been involved in import-export, electronics, and a few side ventures in Southeast Asia. Nothing illegal, at least nothing that I had ever been aware of. But buried in a folder marked KL Operations were invoices and emails referencing a man I'd never met, someone named Jonathan Meyer. One email stood out. It discussed ensuring compliance for a retired American in Malaysia, instructing someone to watch carefully, report weekly. My hands shook as I read it. I realized then that I wasn't just dealing with coincidence. I was a target. And Vienna? She wasn't the harmless woman I thought she was. She had been watching me on someone else's orders. That evening, I met her again at the quiet riverside path near Bukit Bintang. The city lights reflected on the water, but she was trembling. She confessed more than she ever had before. "I wasn't supposed to get involved," she said, voice barely audible over the water lapping against the concrete embankment. "I was hired. That's all. I was supposed to report on you. Your routines, your condo, your interactions, everything." I wanted to scream, to throw her out. Instead, I asked, voice shaking, "Why didn't you?" Her hands trembled as she folded them together. "I couldn't. I didn't want to. You were different. I know how it sounds, but it wasn't just money anymore. It was you." Her words felt like knives wrapped in silk. I didn't know whether to trust her, to hate her, or to be terrified. And then she whispered, "The men you saw in the alley, they were just the beginning. It's bigger than you think." I tried to process her meaning, but the knot in my stomach tightened. Bigger than the men in the alley? Bigger than an old friend's business dealings? "Yes," she said, anticipating the question. "It's a syndicate. They work internationally. And you were a target because of your brother. We both knew that running wouldn't work. The men weren't amateurs. They had connections, resources, eyes everywhere. We had to act. Vienna suggested we secure the documents in my brother's folder and destroy any traces that could make me vulnerable. I hesitated. "This is too dangerous," I said. She looked at me, eyes fierce. "Edward, you've been followed for weeks. Every step. Do you want to keep pretending you're safe? I had no answer. So we planned it together, cautiously. Small steps. Secure copies of any financial documents. Destroy sensitive originals so they couldn't be used against me. Observe patterns to see if anyone followed us. I felt like I had stepped into a spy novel. A 67-year-old retiree thrust into the middle of a foreign syndicate, with only a woman I barely trusted as my partner. It happened faster than I could react. We were walking through a dimly lit parking lot behind a small shopping complex in Pudu. Vienna had insisted we go there. Nobody will look for us here, she said. I wasn't convinced. And then I saw them. Two men on motorcycles, engines low, eyes locked on us. I froze. Vienna grabbed my arm, yanking me behind a concrete pillar. They dismounted, moving fast, their faces hard, expressionless. One of them spoke softly, almost mockingly. You shouldn't be here. Vienna stepped forward, her hand slightly raised, a gesture that made me realize she wasn't just protecting herself. She was protecting me. The taller man sneered. You think you can run? Vienna's voice was calm, but cutting. We don't want trouble. Too late, the other whispered. I wanted to bolt, but my legs refused. The adrenaline made my chest tighten. I could feel her hand squeeze mine, a brief, grounding contact before she stepped in front of me, shielding me with her body. The taller man leaned in, whispering something I barely caught. Don't think she'll save you next time. It was at that moment I realized Vienna had risked everything for me, and the thought made me see her differently, terrifyingly differently. We escaped the parking lot by ducking into a side alley, weaving through delivery trucks and trash bins. My heart pounded, my palms were slick with sweat, and Vienna's breathing was uneven, ragged. We finally stopped in the quiet courtyard of a small apartment building. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. I didn't tell them about the documents, Vienna said finally. Her voice was steady, but I saw the flicker of fear in her eyes. You didn't? I asked. No, I didn't. I couldn't. I care too much to let them hurt you, Edward. Her confession hung between us, delicate and dangerous, a fragile truth in a city that seemed suddenly hostile and alive with shadows. I wanted to ask her 100 questions. Who hired her? What do they want? How many more men are watching us? But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I realized something else. I trusted her, even though I couldn't fully understand why. I hated that I did, and I feared that trusting her might be the most dangerous thing I could do. Over the next few days, we stayed close, moving through Kuala Lumpur cautiously, each step shadowed by uncertainty. Every glance at a passerby made me jump. Every ring of my phone sent me into a silent panic. And through it all, I kept thinking about her words. You were never meant to know I existed. Now I understood why. Because once I knew, I became part of the story. A target, a pawn, and the man who orchestrated it all, Jonathan Meyer, a shadow from my brother's past, was still out there, somewhere, pulling strings I could barely see. Vienna's loyalty was real, but fragile. One wrong move could unravel everything. And yet, despite it all, she remained by my side. Even after the alley, even after the note, even after I learned the truth about her identity. I couldn't decide if that made me safer or if it made everything infinitely more dangerous. Because at that moment, one thing became terrifyingly clear. No matter what happened next, there was no going back. I was in the middle of a story I hadn't asked to be part of, with a woman whose past was a labyrinth I might never fully navigate, and enemies whose reach extended further than I dared to imagine. And the city around us, Kuala Lumpur, bright and bustling by day, dark and shadowed by night, seemed to whisper, this is only the beginning. I didn't expect to hear from Vienna again. After the last call, the one where she told me to leave Malaysia, I assumed she'd disappear for good. And maybe that would have been easier, cleaner, safer. But nothing about this experience has been clean or simple. 3 days after I almost fled KL in the middle of the night, everything changed with one message. A number I didn't recognize sent me a text. Edward, don't run. Help is coming. At first, I thought it was another trap, another layer in a game I didn't understand. But an hour later, 2 plainclothes officers knocked on my door. Real officers. IDs checked. Firm, steady eyes, the kind of eyes that have seen too much and still keep going. Mr. Edward, one of them said, "We need to speak with you regarding an ongoing investigation. A woman named Lim Wei Xian came to us last night." My stomach dropped. Vienna. She went to the police. She gave us information about a loan syndicate, the officer continued. Your safety is involved. I exhaled without meaning to. Fear, relief, confusion, all tangled into something heavy. We need your cooperation in a sting operation, the officer said. Your name came up repeatedly. We believe this group intended to extort you. Is she safe? I asked. The officers exchanged a look. She is under protective supervision, one said carefully. But she's also being investigated for her past involvement. She knew the risks of coming forward. That sentence hit me harder than I wanted to admit. They didn't hide anything from me. Not after everything that happened. The plan was simple but dangerous. They'd intercepted communications between syndicate members. The men Vienna spoke with in Bukit Bintang were still active, and they were planning to retrieve me soon. The police arranged a fake meeting through an intercepted number at an abandoned service alley near Pudu. Late afternoon, public enough to avoid surprises, isolated enough to avoid chaos. My job was simple. Stay far away. Don't be seen. Don't be a hero. Works for me. I've never been a hero in my life. From a safe distance behind tinted police van windows, I watched the sting unfold. The men arrived first. 3 of them. The same ones I saw Vienna arguing with. They waited, restless, checking their phones. Then a police officer, posing as a middleman, approached, pretending to deliver a message from the girl. Where's the old man? One demanded. Not here, the officer replied. She wants her cut first. We're done with her, the man said. She's a problem. The foreigner is more important. That was the moment the police moved. It wasn't dramatic like in movies. No shouting. No slow-motion chase. Just a sharp, coordinated strike. Officers surrounding them. Arms pinned. Weapons seized. Cuffs clicking tight. The men barely had time to blink. Low-level operatives, I later learned. Disposable foot soldiers. But the syndicate lost a small piece of its machinery, and KL became a little safer, at least for a while. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, all I felt was empty, because I knew what came next. Vienna's consequences. Vienna, Wei Xian, was detained after giving her statement. Her past wasn't erased just because she helped me. Scam involvement, false identities, connections with the syndicate. The police were clear. She wasn't innocent, but she wasn't a monster either. She risked her safety to bring them down. She risked her freedom to protect me. So while the syndicate members were taken away in vans, Vienna was taken to the station. Different vehicle, different door, different fate. And I stood outside the police station that night, staring at the entrance long after she disappeared through it. Hope and anger tangled inside me like barbed wire. Hope because she chose the right side, finally. Anger because she dragged me into this nightmare in the first place. Legally, things moved slowly. I gave statements, signed papers, answered questions. Vienna's situation became complicated. Not jail-worthy, she wasn't the mastermind, but she had to face consequences. For weeks, I walked the malls of KL, the parks, the LRT stations, feeling like a ghost, drifting between places that once felt like home. I still checked behind me when I walked. Still locked my door twice. Still felt watched even when I wasn't. I hated that she had this power over my life. I hated even more that I missed her. 3 weeks later, the police called. Mr. Edward, the officer said, Lim Wei Xian is being released today. Minor charges. Community service. She requested to speak with you. You are not obligated. I didn't answer right away. I think he heard the hesitation in my silence. You might want closure, he added gently. He was right. I did. We agreed to meet at the River of Life, the very spot where KL's lights ripple across the water like broken dreams floating downstream. She arrived wearing simple clothes, hair tied back, looking smaller than I remembered. Tired. Different. Human. Edward, she said softly. I didn't know how to start, so I said the truth. You nearly ruined my life. She nodded. Didn't argue. And you saved it, I added. That surprised her. Her eyes watered, but she blinked quickly, trying to stay composed. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry for the lies. Sorry for following you. Sorry for everything I became before I met you." I swallowed hard, because anger and affection don't cancel each other out. They coexist, painfully. "Why me?" I asked. "At first," she exhaled, "because you were alone, because you looked gentle, because you seemed like someone they could break easily. And later," she looked away, "because I didn't want them to touch you, because you talked to me like I mattered, because you made me remember I still had a choice." Silence hung between us like humidity before rain. "What now?" I finally asked. She shook her head. "You deserve peace," she said. "And I need to rebuild my life, without dragging anyone down with me." We stood there for a long moment, watching the water. "I cared about you," I said. "I cared too," she replied. "Maybe too much." But we both knew the truth. We couldn't go back, and we couldn't move forward together. The past was too tangled, the danger too fresh, the trust too broken. We said goodbye quietly. No grand gestures, no last kiss, just two people who collided in the wrong way at the wrong time. She walked one direction, I walked the other. That night, I wandered through a night market alone. Smells of sauté smoke, sizzling noodles, sweet grapes, and fried dough wrapped around me. People laughed, bargained, lived. Life moving forward, normal, messy, chaotic. And me? I'm still here, still walking, still breathing, with a scar shaped like a woman named Vienna, and a lesson carved deep into my bones. Danger doesn't always come with a gun. Sometimes it comes smiling, carrying a paper bag of night market snacks, and calling your name like she's known you forever. And love, or something that felt close to it, can arrive the same way. Unexpected, beautiful, dangerous.